Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on RotoGrinders.com. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blenderhead, a.k.a. hopefully this week, finally, on top of you in the GPP leaderboards on Draftkings, Fanduel, wherever you play. I'm joined, as always, by the man behind the model of Advanced Sports Analytics. It's Stuart Gibson. Stuart, did you have a lineup without an injured player last week?
I did a pretty good job. Not a good job. I got lucky in kind of avoiding most of the injuries, but caught some really low scores from the likes of Mark Andrews. Kenyon Drake was kind of a letdown. So honestly, didn't fare me that well, but still, got some injury riddled lineups in there for sure.
Do you have any injury like proclivity in the can you even do that?
Not really, except for that players that frequently exit games are gonna have more data points where like their snap counts are low or their target counts are low. It would take like James Conner's a guy, I feel like he has just kind of gotten injured in the middle of so many games that he like naturally is going to have a somewhat deflated historical snap count, so that will feed into the model to some extent. But I think there's only a handful of players that get injured so frequently that their propensity for injury kind of registers in the data in a salient way. I think most of the guys not really an issue.
Right, it's happenstance. If it happens, you can't project it really.
Yeah. I think last year we did some research around, I think it might have been following kind of that James Conner injury game early in the year last year. And, trying to do, I guess, some just basic research about what positions, have kind of more and less injury risk. And I don't really think anything super substantive came out of it. But I don't know. Well, look, I don't think these things are like worth a super strong reaction to for just 1 week. If in the next couple weeks we see continually kind of elevated injury rates, maybe a lack of preseason, lack of training camp, could be hypothesized as a cause for that. Maybe then we might kind of try to take a look and see, if we can't be ahead of potential injury risk, but at least for this week, probably going to tend not to be too concerned about players perceived as healthy coming into the week, getting injured. It just, I feel like on the one that you might hit out of 10 kind of guesses at possible injury, you're going to miss out on a lot by avoiding players that you perceive as an injury risk that more times than not aren't going to be an issue for a 1 game sample.
Well, on that note, we're doing the show now on Friday afternoons as opposed to Thursday night. So we do get the Friday practice reports in. So we've a little bit more knowledge on who's in, who's out, who's questionable, who's doubtful. In your model, we have guys like Julio Jones, who is nursing a hamstring injury. I'm going to assume he plays. We see A.J. Brown just got ruled out. Kittle just got ruled out. For the players that carry Q tags, I know in the past there used to be a P tag, a probable tag, and they don't do that anymore. Do you factor into your model like they're guaranteed, like either they're in or they're out, or do you weigh like if they have a Q tag that X percentage of the time they don't play? Because like to me, if you're going to build, you're either building based on the fact that they're in or they're out, and not like I'm going to put a median between like Julio Jones and then also raise Russell Gage and Ridley and Hurst, like in your model to say like, well, I'm going to project them for more in the 20% chance that Julio is out rather than just waiting for the information.
Yeah, I think in the early stages of the week, I try to be optimistic that the players that are limited participants, carrying the Q tag will play, and assume that if a player is doubtful, they're not going to play. Obviously, out is out. And then, as we kind of get into the weekend, it does, I think, take just some manual intervention to kind of look at, okay, how likely is this player to play? If it's like 75% or whatever, probably just project as if they're in. And then if that changes, obviously update projections. I think, one of the trickier, I guess, scenarios to project for is a guy like we had it kind of in week 1 with Evans, where there's a guy who we knew was going to be in, but there were some serious concerns about just the degree in which he's involved. And I think, they're probably try to, be a little conservative on projections for players that we think there is significant risk that either they might be limited in the game due to injury, or, if there is like just high likelihood of re-aggravation. But I don't know. I think for the most part, I try to work under the assumption that guys that are in, are going to play to kind of their fullest extent, unless there's some report that says like, hey, this guy's on a pitch count, or Julio has looked really shaky, and maybe then kind of might do some manual reining in projections. Particularly, I think like just trying to reduce kind of projected volume maybe would be the route I would take. But yeah, I don't know. I think like it's tough. We don't have access to kind of perfect information. We're not inside the locker room of these teams, talking to players to see how they're feeling. And I do think you can kind of get yourself into trouble by, saying, oh, player X is coming off an injury. They're going to be in a timeshare, or, they're not going to be as efficient as they, have previously been when they're healthy. I don't know. I feel like you kind of run the risk of just missing on good opportunity. But it's like, I mean, just like the general principle of modeling, as a whole is like by trying to like overfit and fine tune the way you project an outcome, sure, you might get some players or some instances where you nail it on the head, but in doing so, you set your system up for misses in other, for other players or for other scenarios. I find kind of trying to take like a conservative projection approach will, maybe lead to fewer like, accurately identifying outliers, but you're also going to find yourself missing a lot less on trying to accurately identify the outlier when the players just should be treated as kind of norm.
Well, last week's in the books. Now it's time to review the tape and prepare for this week. Of course, it's daily fantasy sports. We don't care about last week. There's no better place to get in on all the action than with Draftkings, the leader in one-day daily fantasy sports. To add to this week's excitement, Draftkings has a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes. They're up for grabs right now. If you haven't tried Draftkings yet, I don't know why you'd be listening to the show. Maybe you're on a different platform and you haven't played on DK yet. So head to the App Store now because you don't want to miss this. Draft your lineup and feel the sweat like never before. Every run, pass, and catch means more with Draftkings. It's simple. Just pick your lineup, stay under the salary cap, and see how your team stacks up against the competition. Nothing adds to the excitement of watching the game quite like having a shot at millions of dollars in prizes. DraftKings has paid out billions of dollars to winners since 2012. Some of that went to me, right? You want to be like me? So they know a thing or two about cold hard cash. So download the DraftKings app now and use the code DFF. That's the code DFF. For a limited time, new users can get a free shot at millions of dollars in prizes this week. Don't miss out on the week 3 action. Enter code DFF to get a free shot at millions of dollars in prizes with your first deposit. It's a minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. You can see DraftKings.com for details. So enter the code DFF only on DraftKings. Make it rain. So we want to make it rain with offense this week. There's quite obviously two target games that are going to be the chalk. But I think there are caveats in that game that we could exploit. So, I mean, they're by far and away. I mean, we always talk about stacking and targeting the higher total games, the ones that are going to go off, shootouts. And the Cowboys-Seahawks game is currently at 56.5. And the Arizona Cardinals and the Lions game is at 55. That game's gone up 2 points since open. The other game's gone up 1 point since open. The problem is that like it's a 13-game slate, and like all the ownership is there. Like Arizona, for instance, like Kyler's chalk at quarterback, Hopkins is chalk at wide receiver, Drake is chalk at running back. And then you see on the other game, you got Lockett and Metcalf. They're going to be 15+% owned each, obviously paired with Wilson. And then the Cowboys, you have Zeke at over 20% ownership. You're going to see Cooper, Lamb, Gallup, 10+% ownership. So obviously the correlation, I mean, they make sense independent of the games, but in lineups, like if you're going to play a lineup that's like, I'm going to play Kyler with Hopkins and then play Lockett and Zeke or something like that. It's like the combined ownership of that lineup is so high that, as I always say, I don't mind pieces of the game, but I think they're so obvious. It's not like one of these slates where like one total's 50, the next one's 48, then 47, and kind of like I know that Stuart, you do like the chances of it being the highest scoring team. I'm going to assume, not knowing, that the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Cowboys show up 1, 2, 3 far above more than the other teams.
Yeah, and I mean, in previous weeks we've seen kind of that top team, most likely team to top the slate being, not, being, I think, the leader of a kind of close field towards the top. Probably like one, anywhere from 3 to 5 different teams that have kind of this 8 to 10, 8 to 11% chance of topping the slate. I mean, this week we're projecting Seattle as 13% chance of scoring the most points on the slate. Arizona as a hair over 12%, and then the next highest team in terms of likelihood to top the slate is actually Indianapolis, all the way down at 7.5%. So I mean, there's like this huge gap between really Seattle and Arizona, and then kind of the rest of the field. Last week, we kind of talked about being not so much underweight, but just avoiding the obvious pieces as part of that Dallas. Dallas in particular, they were projected to be the highest scorer. But it did feel like last week, at least to me, there were more kind of alternative games that could compete closely with, Dallas and, some pieces on the Atlanta side. It does feel like that's a little less the case this week.
And especially also with the way that the pricing is, we don't have a Saquon, we don't have a McCaffrey, we don't have Michael Thomas on the slate. Like Hopkins is the highest priced receiver, and Zeke is the highest priced running back. Kyler's under 7K. You don't have a Lamar or Mahomes. So like the pricing is not even that prohibitive. A lot of times when you stack high total games and you look, it's like, well, you're going to have to spend a lot of salary to do it. Like on this slate, we're going to have value at running back. There's going to be some value at wide receiver that, I mean, I even think based on the ownership that Jamino has currently, I think it's going to pass that. Like we have Hopkins at 19.8 right now. I think it's going to be like 30 to 32% ownership. And I mean, he projects better than everyone else on the slate. I mean, I get it. But I think in terms of how could we have these players with a correlation that's going to be less used? So I find it very funky that Arizona is so chalky while the Lions aren't. Like, and if you're going to play a 3-1 stack or a correlation back and forth type of game, I mean, yeah, the Lions running backs you kind of want to avoid because they can run anyone out of 3 or 4 guys. But Galladay's at 7.5% coming back from injury. We have Marvin Jones at 2.5%. I'm trying to scroll down. I mean, Hawkinson, is barely projected to be owned. He's a little overpriced at 5,300. And then Stafford's going to be under 5% owned. Why can't I play this game with the reverse stack and go Stafford and 2 pass catchers and then run it back with Drake or run it back with Hopkins? Because if Hopkins has a 3 touchdown game, like that means Kyler didn't rush the ball in. So maybe I'm not as concerned about Kyler Murray's ceiling. And the same thing with Drake, that if I take Drake and he has 3 touchdowns rushing, well, that takes away from Kyler's ceiling. So it's not like Stafford has to reach Murray's status, but if Murray ends up with 25 points and Stafford ends up with 24 points, it's not that big of a deal as long as I get the production from both sides of the game out of either Drake or Hopkins. And then obviously you got the subsidiary pieces. We just got word that Christian Kirk is not going to play. So maybe you throw in a Fitz or a Isabella or a Arnold, but I think people are going to do that anyway. I think you're just basically throwing in a punt tight end or a punt wide receiver that may correlate. You may get 1 touchdown out of them, but if they score 10 points, you could find a cheap receiver in another game. And then once you do that, you're chalky again. So I'm looking at both of these games, realizing that they're far above all the other games as far as shootout potential. But I just don't want to make lineups that half of my lineup, 20% of the field has.
Yeah, that Arizona game to me, I think, as you suggested, is going to draw a lot of ownership. And, I would guess that would draw ownership away from pretty much 2 spots. You discussed one, Detroit. I think for a while there, last week, it was looking like the Atlanta side of that Dallas-Atlanta game was actually going to be, the good side to be on. So I do think, in these high total games, there's some merit to, avoiding the more popular favorite in favor of the, less popular underdog. Those guys that you mentioned, I think I would like to think that Galladay coming back should be a big boost for Stafford. Even a guy like DeAndre Swift has been kind of ascending in terms of his, just time on the field, is playing more snaps than anyone else in that offense. Adrian Peter in that backfield rather. And he's going to be kind of that prototypical pass catching back for Detroit. I think that would be a kind of a deeper play. But I think there's interesting pieces on the Detroit side. I do wonder, if Arizona is going to be so popular, I think we kind of had this in week 1 where a lot of people were gravitating towards, Brady and Tampa, and that took ownership away from, a guy like Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore pieces, or I forget who else. There's one other kind of high implied total game that just went a little underowned relative to, just how likely it was to be kind of the top scoring team on slate. And, I do wonder if the popularity of Arizona is going to take away from ownership on Seattle. Russ is priced up a little bit over Murray, but his receiving pieces are, cheaper than the Arizona side. And, that still is the top total on the game, top total game on the slate. To me, that would be a spot I'd be interested in being kind of overweight on, figuring that per dollar, Seattle, I think has just as good, if not better of a chance than the Arizona pieces to, be kind of the winning combination. So I think rather than being on Arizona, my strategy might be to be on either side of Arizona, either be kind of above them in terms of implied total with Seattle guys. Last year, we discussed when Brandon was on the show how the Seattle pieces are just really well correlated. Russ to his receivers, obviously, and Metcalf and Lockett actually correlate pretty well with one another. To me, that feels like a pretty stackable team. In a really interesting spot if Arizona and Kyler are going to be so chalky. I think that could be a good place to go.
Well, I think that if I do a Seattle stack, I think utilizing the negative correlation in both games, like what I did last week by going under on the Cowboys passing game, but playing a lot of Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
I think doing the same with Arizona, that in lineups that you don't have Kyler or Hopkins, use Drake.
Yeah.
If Drake gets into the end zone, he's taking away points from both of them. So you're gonna gain leverage over any Cardinal stacks. But obviously, if Drake's going to be popular also. So that's like, to me, that's the conundrum of, if I play a Seattle stack, let's say Wilson with Lockett and Metcalf, you can even throw in like a Greg Olsen in there if you want. I mean, the main targets are going to be Lockett and Metcalf. That you play Drake in that lineup, but now you're still a chalky lineup. Now, at that point, you need to find a receiver that's like Drake and Marvin Jones Jr. Like, if Marvin Jones is going to be 2% owned, at least he's kind of correlated to the other side of the game from Drake and going to be 2%. And then on the Seattle side, if you're going to stack Seattle, maybe you take Michael Gallup instead of Lamb or Cooper, because he's going to be the lowest owned out of the three Cowboys receivers. And then your flex could be some low owned 5%, running back or something like that. And now you have enough leverage. Now you're good. I just think that, like, if you're going to play that lineup, you're not playing Miles Sanders in that lineup. You're probably not playing Jonathan Taylor in that lineup. Just the lineup becomes just, you're not going to win it. You're not going to win the millie that way. I mean, it's just too high owned in total. So, like, my conundrum this week is, how do I build my stacks? Because I know how to build my stacks that aren't this game. Because once I build a stack that aren't either of these two games, like, I don't care about the rest of my lineup. I mean, it could be chalky. It doesn't matter. Those stacks are going to be so much more lower owned. It's how to build lineups using these two games while still being different enough in large field contests. If you're doing small field, if you're playing the Spy or something, 4,000 entries, you don't have to consider MJJ against Drake at 2%. You're good. Like, it doesn't matter. Then you're fine. But in these large field contests, I'm going to be using Lineup HQ, which you can get if you're a Core 4 premium member. Use rotogrinders.com/media/ASA. The link is in the description in the YouTube video, and click, and you get $5 off your first month of a Core 4 premium RotoGrinders subscription. That's NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, tons of content. So go check that out. So, Stuart, don't you think that, like, because these two games are obviously much higher, obviously they get bust. If both of them bust, you're going to kill a lot of lineups in the contests. But yeah. I just think the core facet of, if I'm playing 100 lineups on Sunday, and let's say I'm playing 20, 30 that involve stacks of these games, I need to be very cognizant of how I build those lineups.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be cognizant of the players you're selecting in that game, and also making sure that, if you are owning kind of chalky to, middling, I guess, kind of in popularity piece in this game, getting different elsewhere, because, these two games will be pretty popular. So you mentioned Elliott, you mentioned Drake as good kind of negatively correlated pieces to, prototypical stack for those games.
Right. Carson also, if you want to do that on that side with the Seahawks.
I was going to say, so yes, for Seattle, Carson. I mean, is there anyone on Detroit that you think makes sense as, I think they will easily be the least popular of kind of these four teams, but if you did want to build, like, I don't know, I guess maybe through air, like, I don't know, are there any kind of like negatively core, pieces on the Detroit side you like as, being able to get there while either the game as a whole doesn't get there, or the Detroit, offense as a whole doesn't get there? I mean, do you consider building? I mean, I still think like Arizona kind of onslaught builds without bringing any Detroit back will be fairly popular.
Right. Well, that's why I'm looking to include like a Marvin Jones.
Okay.
In those types of lineups. I think Golladay will come back. He'll get, he's going to be low enough owned as it is, 7%. But we've seen it before that when Marvin Jones is the number one wide receiver, he really doesn't. He's really not the number one wide receiver. He works better when Golladay is out there drawing coverage, and then he's in the back of the end zone. And we've seen games where Marvin Jones has 6 catches, 80 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And because my attitude is that if you're going to play the Arizona side of the game, like, you might as well play the Detroit side of the game because you're going to need so many points with them being so chalky. If the Cardinals only put up 24 points on Sunday, I don't think the stat gets there. I mean, and the only way that then Detroit has to stay in the game. So, like, you're either using Drake or you're using the passing attack. And if you're using the passing attack, like throwing in Galladay or Marvin Jones will do enough ownership wise. And that's why the same thing in the other game. If you're going to use Wilson, Lockett, and Metcalf, like the only way that both of those guys get there is the game has to go back and forth. So you might as well take Amari Cooper, take one of the wide receivers. Zeke is a bit expensive, for that kind of run back. I'm more likely in these games to use the running backs as one-offs in other lineups as the negative correlation to these games, and then or not use the running backs at all in these games. And you mentioned another game. You said the third highest are the Colts.
Yeah.
They're playing the Jets. The Jets are free. I don't know if they're good free. I don't think they have ceilings. But, like, they have the lowest implied total. Like, the Colts only have a high total because they're playing the Jets. Do you really think that – I mean, I know that T.Y. Hilton's grandma called him out. Saying that he hasn't seen her grandson on TV the way he plays. Like, do you really see this game as the most probable outcome? I know they're like 11-point favorites. That it's high pace enough where the Jets keep up that, like, I could see playing Taylor by himself and that's it. Like, okay, great. But, like, stacking Rivers and Hilton, like, and then running it back with who? You try Herndon again? It's one of those things where I can't. How do I occupy 4 or 5 spots on my roster with this game?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Really both teams, I think, have good kind of floor median like outcomes, but really both sides, maybe Taylor being the lone exception, there's really not a ton of ceiling to them. I mean, I don't know. You're going to have a hard time talking me into Jets guys, no matter how cheap they are. God, I mean, this
Braxton Berrios for you?
I mean, like, look, on paper and for cheap as these guys are, it seems fine. But, we've seen this offense time and time again, be cheap and just really not show any ability to, keep up or kind of push their opponents in a way that, and I think, Indianapolis isn't a team that if they're not pushed, they're going like if there's no need to, they're going to be slow. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to take kind of short passes. Like I just have a hard time seeing this game really blowing up in a big way.
Yeah, with Rivers as the quarterback now, if this was Andrew Luck, maybe you have a different opinion. But I think with the coaching staff with Rivers, like, unless the Jets keep up, I see the Colts. I see Jonathan Taylor possibly having 30 carries this game.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's kind of the spot to look. It's just, if you're going with some of those other pieces from the 2 big games up top, I just, it's going to be hard to also stomach playing a guy as popular as Taylor. To me, like a game with a similar total that just has 2 teams that are, in my opinion, far more likely to produce over, exceed their kind of total and just game script, it'd be like Cleveland or Washington.
So that's a 45 total. That's one of the games that I'm not on. I thought you were going to mention some other game. So let's talk about that. Washington, Cleveland. Like, I look at this game as, like, I can't see stacking the game. I can see correlating the game. I could see playing McLaurin on one side and Chubb on the other. But then, of course, you got Kareem Hunt there. I think the running back value on the slate, like, why do I want to pay at 6,900 Nick Chubb? Of course, that means he's lower owned. But, like, I don't see this. Do you see this game turning into a shootout?
No, but I think it's more likely to, play kind of paced up than Indianapolis versus the Jets. like Cleveland's got a similar, I guess, implied total to Indianapolis, and Washington's up a little bit on the Jets. And I think for me, like, even though it's a super low total, Washington has more pieces that can kind of cause the game to pace up. With McLaurin, with Gibson, with tight end Thomas.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making is that I'm on board with the individual plays, like 1-1 secondary correlations. I could see playing Logan Thomas on one side and OBJ on the other side. I could see playing, I could doing that, but I just don't see myself building stacks with Baker Mayfield or Dwayne Haskins.
Look, I'm not saying it's a like spot I'm prioritizing. I'm just saying it is, to me, looks like kind of a comparable, game total and, projected non-competitive game to Indianapolis, New York. I don't know. To me, I don't see like either of them as being particularly strong places to look towards stacking. But you're saying you kind of like the Indianapolis, as a stacking option?
No, I was trying to make the point that the Jets could project, if you look at lineup builders, optimizers, that with Perriman out and Crowder out and Bell out, all these guys are under 4K. Like, I'm known for the vomit stacks. It's just the context of these slates now, when you have no one to pay up for, that you don't have guys that in the 9K rate, you don't have Michael Thomas, and you're jamming in people that have 30+ point ceilings. I look at this and I go, like, Berrios, if he puts up 16, it's like that's good for his price, but will it win you a large field GPP? Probably not. If you stack Sam Darnold and Berrios and Hogan or something, or Herndon, and you run it back with Taylor, like, and the Jets score 21 points, which is 5 points above their implied total. Like, they just don't have a ceiling. I mean, I'm not going to get 20+ points out of every slot. Like, I can't, like, I just don't see that. It's just a matter of, if the Colts are going to blow out the Jets, like, is it like, I'm looking at, instead of using Taylor, using Hilton. It's like that, like, pivoting off because Taylor's going to be popular. The Colts are, based on your model, third highest scoring team. It's just a matter of like running it back with anyone on the Jets just seems like, how am I getting a ceiling in that outcome? Like, unless the Jets just wake up and they score 30 points. But Adam Gase should have been fired 2 years ago, and it ain't going to happen. Yeah,
no, it does feel pretty unlikely at this point.
Right. The game that okay, here there are two games that I'm interested in, higher totals than the Washington Browns one. No, there's a couple more. There's the two main games that I'm interested in, at least, and then one game that puzzles me. We'll go over the one that I'm interested in. First one, maybe the easier one to talk about, is the Falcons-Bears game. 47 total. From my perspective, if that game goes off, like, the Bears have very condensed. Like, you got Trubisky, Allen Robinson, and like, do I need a third piece? Maybe I throw in a Jimmy Graham. Maybe he catches 2 touchdowns, but I don't know. And then the Falcons, like, you could play any one of their wide receivers as a run back. Or you could play Ryan with 2 of their receivers and then play Allen Robinson on the other side. I just look at this game with the Falcons defense being fairly poor, and 47 total in Atlanta, in the dome, right? Kari loves those domes. That, it's a 3-point spread. Like, I could identify, I'm not taking secondary pieces in this game. I could just identify who's going to get all the production and just take them and hope they outscore the 2 big total games. Or like the Seattle-Dallas game becomes a game where it gets spread out so much that none of their individual pieces have they all get 18 points. And it's like, okay, the stack didn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of saw that happen like on Thursday night with Miami. I mean, they got to 30 something points. Yet like none of their guys got there because it just was, Gesicki catches a touchdown, Williams catches a touchdown. So spread out. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, if this game is going to, be fodder for a tournament winning lineup, it's, Chicago's going to have to kind of keep up, their end of the total and I mean, exceed it, obviously. So yeah, I mean, Trubisky is a guy, I'd probably burn money on just about every week. And it always, it always looks good, like on paper, and just doesn't seem to work out. But at least in my experience, but I know he actually won a couple millionaire makers. I think, was it last year or 2 years ago?
Yeah, he's won 3 milli makers. It works every time. It works 60% of the time, that gift type of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Chicago is quite condensed. Like Robinson seems like a guy that super trustworthy. Is just going to have 25 to 35% of Chicago targets. Anthony Miller he's kind of hot and cold. Like there's times where he's just super involved in the offense, and really so far this year his involvement has left a little bit to be desired. So might be a spot to just kind of go skinny with like Trubisky, Robinson, and some an Atlanta piece, and then get some of the pieces like you mentioned in that those 2 high total games. Atlanta's got. I think of Atlanta as being kind of not condensed. It's kind of whack-a-mole at times, but I think Julio always is has a super high ceiling, super low floor. Ridley's looked awesome this year. Hayden Hurst is a guy I think that we've kind of been waiting on to see him take on a role closer to what Austin Hooper had last year than Hurst's role with Baltimore. And last week was a good step in that direction. And Russell Gage, I think it would be like a really nice piece to add. Maybe not going up against the Chicago stack, but if you wanted to stack the Atlanta side, going like 2 of pretty much never going 2 of Julio, doing like max like 1 of Julio Ridley, but always at least 2 of Ridley, Julio, Gage, maybe Hurst, something like that. Get some like Ridley Gage, Julio Gage, Ridley Hurst Gage, Julio Hurst Gage. 3 I think would be a bit excessive just given the game total, but something like that, just kind of, and you can do just like a lot of, I think, positive EV kind of combinations with that Atlanta team. And obviously some of those combos are going to flunk this week, but there's, I think, good opportunity for just about all of them to, kind of hit value in a big way, and, maybe win a tournament. So,
right. And these guys will come in lower owned just based on the fact that Hopkins at that 7+ K price is going to soak up on all of the ownership, or much of it, at that range. So it's a leverage spot, because who's going to play Julio after last week, right? With the hamstring injury and everything. We have him projected at 8% owned. And, if Julio put up 40 points, you're not surprised. Yeah.
One mistake I probably will not, one mistake I'm going to try not to make with the Chicago side is I kind of am a sucker for Tariq Cohen, and his role has kind of been decreasing in a big way for Chicago this year. So I'm going to make a point to not go too happy on Tariq Cohen. That seems like it's been a letdown spot so far this year, and one to avoid for sure.
Okay, so the other game that I'm interested in, 47.5 total, Bengals at Eagles.
Oh, this was not the game I thought you were going to go with.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay.
Let's talk Bengals.
Eagles. Okay, so Miles Sanders is uber chalk, 35% owned. He's underpriced on DraftKings, 6,400. Unless Doug Peterson does something funny and, Boston Scott's in there and Corey Clement's taking snaps. But we saw last week that essentially he's kind of the bell cow. The thing that's interesting is that the game has a 47+ total. Sanders is projected to be 35% owned, and no one else in this game is projected to be more than like 5% owned. So I'm looking at this going, like, I could play chalk Sanders in a reverse stack, or I could play a leverage stack against chalk Sanders. Like, I look at the leverage opportunities. Let's say everyone plays Sanders and the Eagles get there through the air. And of course, Sanders could get there through the air also. Like Wentz, Goddard, Jackson. Wentz, Ertz, Jackson, because Rager's out and Sanders doesn't get there. Sanders gets 12 points. It's not like he's getting nothing, but he doesn't hit a ceiling, and the passing game hits the ceiling. And then Bengals have run backs, or you just play Chuck Sanders, and you play Joe Burrow. AJ Green, who has a million air yards because they just chuck to try to jam it into him, is 2.5% projected owned. Tyler Boyd is not even in the ownership projections. Mixon is 5%. Like, why can't I play Sanders and then just play a double stack of Burrow, or a single or skinny stack? And so I could play Sanders and get the correlated piece to if the game goes off, or I play the leverage version of don't play Sanders, but play Deshaun Jackson and play Carson Wentz and that type of thing. I look at that from the ownership perspective. Like, we have one high owned piece of the game, and we have two ways to get different while still using it.
Yeah, no, that seems reasonable to me. I mean, our models are pretty favorable towards Wentz and Jackson, and then Goddard and Ertz. In the absence of Rieger, it could really just be like the tight end show for Philadelphia. Yeah, and I mean, I think the Cincinnati side, like you mentioned, like AJ Green he does have all those air yards and just hasn't converted on them. So I think it's still worth trying to hope that he catches a couple of those and maybe converts at an above average rate this week. And we saw that Cincinnati offense, I think, more so than they had last year. An ability to kind of get behind, but continue to keep games close and push the opposition, at least in that week 2 game against Cleveland. I think seems like a decent spot. And I mean, Sanders, I think, will be uber chalk. I think, at least to me, seems like pretty good chalk. But if you I guess probably worth taking some lineups and pretty much playing the exact opposite of Miles Sanders to get leverage on
because in that type of game, let's say I don't play Sanders, it removes 35% ownership from my lineup. I play the Eagles stack of Wentz, Goddard, one of the tight ends, and Deshaun Jackson, run it back with AJ Green. I could put DeAndre Hopkins in that lineup. I could play chalk Hopkins because I'm not playing chalk Sanders. So I'm I could play the pieces of the Seattle-Dallas game. So I'm looking of ways, I don't want to play Miles Sanders in my Cardinals, Seahawks, Cowboys lineup. So it's how do I still play this game and get leverage off of the people that are playing Sanders?
Yeah. So
what game did you think I was going to talk about?
I thought you were going to go New England, Las Vegas.
Okay. Oh, I want to go there too. Okay. That's not the game I'm flummoxed by. So we just got word that Henry Ruggs will be out on Sunday. Okay.
But real quick, just on the Philly side. So, let's say we wanted to build for, a Sanders fade. To me, the game script that most aligns with kind of that outcome would be Cincinnati actually playing from ahead and Philly playing catch up. Or do you think Sanders, I guess, is a pretty dynamic pass catch?
Right.
Okay, never mind.
I think it's more the fact that Sanders doesn't, maybe the game shoots out, Sanders doesn't get there. He still gets 50 yards rushing and 4 catches out of the backfield, but doesn't find the end zone. It's a long Deshaun Jackson 100-yard game and 2 touchdowns to the tight ends. It's not like Sanders does bad. It's just that he doesn't score more than 20 points, which at 35% ownership, you're going to need.
I mean, do you see a guy like Joe Mixon being kind of a viable, negatively correlated, anti-Sanders play? If Mixon gets there, it's because he's, running the ball 20 plus times, for over 100 yards and a touchdown or 2. That would, I think it works better not as a piece that is part of a Cincinnati Philly stack, but more just like Mixon, I think would be an interesting guy with those 2, if you wanted to stack up Seattle or Arizona and say all right, well, I'm pretty chalky there. So let me get the one guy who probably has the most negative core, you would guess has kind of the most, leverage against Sanders. I would guess Mixon, and Sanders are probably similarly priced. Maybe Mixon.
Yeah, no, 500 difference. No, I get what you're saying. To me, Mixon is good as a one-off. I just think that it's more likely if Mixon has a big game, the game did not shoot out.
Correct.
Right. So that's why, like, I'm less inclined to play Wentz plus Jackson plus one of the tight ends and then have Mixon as the run back. Because I think that game goes under in that case.
For sure. Okay, got you. So Mixon good. Yeah.
Individual one-off of the game. You don't have anyone else in the game. Like, you play Mixon and no one else in the game.
Yep. All right. That makes sense.
Okay, so now you wanted to talk about the which is fine with me, Patriots-Raiders. Game's a 47 total. The line just moved towards the Raiders, but I don't know how that's going to be with Ruggs now out. I'm assuming you're looking at Cam Newton 100 cheaper than Kyler Murray, going that he has as much rushing upside and touchdown equity that he could outscore Kyler.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just interested also, like, is Cam going to keep rushing at this rate? Like, to me, that doesn't feel sustainable really for him, and kind of just, I mean, I don't know. We've never really seen how Belichick runs an offense with a quarterback that can run, but, like, I mean, some of the volume numbers that guys like Edelman and N'Keal Harry are getting are, like, they're getting really large and kind of condensed shares of their team's targets, but just because Newton is running the ball so much, there hasn't been like a whole lot of, receiving goodness to go around. But
Edelman had 179 yards last week.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I guess. But, like, no, yeah, you're right.
He went 8 for 179 and a touchdown. That's a ceiling. Come on.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, so then, why can't why doesn't, like, a Newton Edelman or Newton Harry, Waller stack, does something like that seem appealing? Or
it makes sense. To me, that's the easiest one to do. It's so obvious on who you'd stack. And then if you wanted to, if James White doesn't play, people don't realize that Burkhead was on the field like 70+% of the time. Yep. That, like, at 4K or whatever he is, like, I don't mind playing Burkhead by himself. Probably don't play him with Cam for him to hit a ceiling. But, like, to me, the plays are obvious because now with Ruggs out, like, the problem that I see, because you have to think, the Patriots are the only team that I sometimes try to outthink what Belichick's going to do. Because the whole narrative is that Belichick's goal is to take away your best option. So now Ruggs is gone, and he wasn't the best. Waller's the best option. But are they going to put Gilmore on Waller? I mean, like, I don't see that. Like, who's catching the ball for the Raiders? Like, what's going to happen? Are you going to have Edwards and Renfro? Renfro can't get past. They're not going to play Gilmore on Renfro. He can barely run. So, like who's Aguilar is good? I guess Aguilar is to me, it's hard to see how the Raiders stretch the field in this game. So, like, to me, from a shootout perspective, I think I like it because it's condensed. It's very similar to, like, the Bears. And I'm Trubisky, Robinson, I'm good. Like, I could do Cam, Harry, Edelman, I'm good. Waller on the other side, very obvious. It's just that I'm a little bit more concerned about, we have two games that have 55 totals, and I look at this game and go, how does Carr turn this into a shootout? Like how does Jacobs turn this into, like, how does this game, them going to the East Coast for an early game, like, how, like, that's my problem. It's like, I like the pieces, but it's hard for me to envision how this game goes over.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense at least?
Yeah, it does. I think I kind of just fall in love with some of these, target share numbers that, like, Edelman and Harry are putting up, and it's all really appealing, at the price tags that they're at.
I would play them as individual pieces. I mean, I don't mind. I'll still have them in my player pool. Maybe I still do play some. You can play with no one running back on the Raiders. Maybe they spread it around so much that the Patriots score 31 points. It's a game's 31-10, But, Cam has 30 points on, 1 rushing touchdown, 3 passing touchdowns. Harry has a touchdown, and Edelman has 120 yards, and you don't need a run back. Because Waller's expensive at tight end. So, if he doesn't get there, how do they shoot this out? Is Brian Edwards gonna catch 9 passes? I mean, are they just gonna run Jacobs 25 times? That's not that they're gonna run out the clock that way.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So think about maybe this more as a, compelling pieces. But all right.
The game that I'm flummoxed. Can we go over the game that I'm flummoxed by?
Sure.
Flummoxed. It's the game that has the highest total movement of the week. It's opened. It opened at 45.5. It is now up to 49.5. 4 points to the over. It is Titans-Vikings. Titans with a 26 implied total. Vikings with a 23.5 implied total in a dome. Just for the Cardi shout out. AJ Brown has been ruled out. The Vikings, talk about condensed. It's essentially Cook and Thielen. And the Titans, talk about condensed. It's essentially Henry. And again, maybe you throw in a Corey Davis or a Humphreys or a Smith or something. This is a 49.5 total in a dome. The ownership on this game, I could go here. Let's go to Jamino's ownership on this game. I scroll. Where do I find it? It's that low, so I have to scroll here. Henry 17%, Thielen 15, Jonnu Smith 14, everyone else single digits. This is the game I'm flummoxed by, because if you pictured Titans-Vikings, from just your historic whatever past 3 years, you'd go, this is the slowest game on the slate.
Yeah.
Why is it a 49.5 total? So that's what flummoxes me, because it's so condensed. If it's this is the 3rd highest total on the slate, and it has lower ownership. People were burned by Henry last week. Why aren't I stacking this game? It feels like I shouldn't. That's the point. Stewart, tell me what. Tell me. The numbers, the total says I should. But you look at Titans-Vikings and go, there's going to be 40 plays in this game. Then how does it get to 50 points?
Yeah, I don't know. And especially with AJ Brown being out, he, to me, seems like one of the kind of guys that could really speed the game up. But, without him, yeah, I mean.
You're flummoxed too. I see it on your face. Why was this bet up 4 points?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's this may sound disgusting. Hey, I said David Montgomery was disgusting last week, and he got there. So maybe the disgusting play. This sounds disgusting based on how he's been. Why aren't I playing Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen and Derrick Henry and Corey Davis and run a 2-2 stack? I get all the rushing, and I get Corey Davis at 5,200, and there you go. And it's one of the few times that I'll run a 2-2, but that could literally be all the production, and Cousins could get 300 yards. He spreads the ball around, and Thielen's sitting there with 9 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And yeah, BC Johnson gets one. Cook runs one in, but he doesn't make his salary at 7,600. Who else in this game are you playing? It just boggles my mind because of the ownership. It's a 50 total, and there's only a couple of players, and I don't have to guess. I know where to go in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem to be kind of one of the ultimate, trust the Vegas numbers, because, yeah, I mean, you just look at the two teams, both their playing kind of style and pace, as well as, I think both defenses are, decent enough defenses.
Well, the Vikings have been horrible. Maybe that's why the line's going up. What does your model say? How do the Titans, with the 26 implied total, Titans and Vikings show up as far as the likelihood of them being the top scoring team?
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick. Let's see. I just updated this not that long before the show, so I would hope that, unless it's, a lot of that movement has come super recently.
No, I checked this yesterday. It was at 49.5 yesterday.
Yeah, so I have the Titans as about 5.5% chance of being the highest scoring team on the slate. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th on the slate between Philadelphia and Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, not like that far behind. I mean, not hardly at all behind Dallas as far as likelihood to be the top scoring team. Ahead of teams like Atlanta, which we've discussed. Tampa Bay has been kind of a popular team so far. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. Would you just go Derrick Henry and just assume that he's gonna
gonna run him over? Just one of those Derrick Henry games. We get those Derrick Henry. We get those 160 yards and 3 touchdown games.
Yeah, and then bring back like Cousins and Thielen.
Right. Yeah, but see, the problem is that when you think of that game script, you think of if Henry gets 28 touches, how does this game reach 50 points? But like the game has gone up. It's not like the game opened and went down. Like the game has been bet up 4 points. And you don't seem to understand why, and I don't seem to understand why. It seems like the DFS industry doesn't understand why. I've listened to tons of shows. No one is talking about this game. I mean, people are talking about like maybe you go back to Henry because because he burned you last week. But no one's talking about stacking Tannehill. No, I don't think Kirk Cousins has been mentioned in a single piece of content in the entire based on last week. But the way that we talk on this show is that we take away those biases, right? We want to take away the bias out of our model. And we show over the long period that the higher total games correlate to stacking success in DFS. That's why we're not talking about the Giants 49ers game. I'm sorry if you came for this. It's a 41 total and it's garbage. So we're not going to talk about it. So I have to mention, you brought up the Washington Browns game at 45, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm looking at Titans-Vikings going, what do they know that I don't? Because I can't. Cousins, Thielen, Henry sounds like a game that's 17-14, right? It seems like that's why adding Davis, like Henry gets there with 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. First price is fine, but Davis also has 100 yards receiving and a touchdown, and Cousins throws 150 yards to Thielen with 2 touchdowns, and then some secondary Kyle Rudolph here and Dalvin Cook dump offs or whatever. Like that, to me, that's the way it goes over because like Cousins, Thielen, Davis, like how does Derrick Henry see none of this? How does it get to 50 points? I'm going to say it again. Like I'm like Khalif Raymond. I mean, like how does this get to 50 points?
I mean, Henry is, I think, a rare running back with his, and I don't know if it's just noise or, he has this special big playability, but he does feel like one of the few running backs that can like
just a 90-yard rush and like it opens up the game completely.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, Minnesota is going to be pretty run heavy if given the opportunity to really get them going. I think they're going to have to fall in a pretty big and pretty early, deficit. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird game. It wasn't even one that was kind of on my radar. But
it shouldn't be on your radar. It doesn't make any sense to be on your radar. But I can't argue with the number, right, Stuart? Right, me and you, we can't. It's a 49. It's the 3rd highest total on the slate, and I'm just sitting there going, why?
Yeah.
A lot of people in the industry are talking about Rams Bills. 46.5 total. It's gone up 1.5. The problem I find in this game is, like, yes, Allen and Diggs make sense. I get it. Zach Moss is out, so Singletary's more in play. He's going to be fairly popular at 4,900. The problem is, as with always with the Rams, is like people are saying that Woods is going to be covered by, this is going to get shadow coverage, and then it opens up Cooper Kupp. I see how this game becomes a shootout. In comparison to it's not like they're going to be high owned. It's like, it's only a 46.5 total. And if it's the weird thing, if you told me that the Rams Bills had the same total as the Titans-Vikings, I'd believe you, but it's not. It's a 3-point difference. So do you see anything on your end when it comes to a high scoring game team with the Bills and the Rams? Because I I think I'm more likely to be under this game than over.
Yeah, no, neither team is showing up as super likely to put up the top score on the slate. And yeah, I mean the Rams offense is like, I mean it's condensed kind of around three guys, but it's pretty evenly split and kind of variable week over week between Woods, Kupp, and Higbee. Yeah, to me, I mean this game isn't garnering much interest from a tournament standpoint. I think Singletary is a compelling single piece or cash game play, but I don't know, for the most part, this isn't a game that's been on my radar in a big way.
Would you say the same for the Steelers-Texans?
What, in that it's not a compelling tournament game?
Right. I mean, because obviously Fuller's healthy. Like I just don't see rostering Watson and Fuller.
Yeah.
And I don't see double stacking like Juju and Johnson or something. Like I could see the Steelers putting up points in this game, but I think this is the game where I'm more likely to roster Connor and David Johnson than the receivers.
Yeah, actually a pretty similar, I think, game in terms of not a whole lot of tournament intrigue, but yeah, I think Connor's an interesting, one-off piece. Johnson as well. Both guys can get there on the ground or through the air. So yeah, I think we're generally aligned with kind of how.
Okay, so everything else has a lower than 45 total. Is there any pieces of any of the other games, or you think the line's bad and we should be stacking? Because I look at Tampa and go with Godwin back, and they're both being high-priced receivers. Like I can't see playing anyone on Tampa. I mean, no one else can either. But like I take a look at Tampa Bay, but this Broncos team is Judy's questionable. Sutton's out for the year. They have Driscoll throwing the ball. Hamler is $3K and cheap. And Bucks traditionally you could throw on and not necessarily run on. So Gordon maybe is not as much of a play. But the stack, I can't. I mean, it's quite possible I have none of this game.
Yeah, really. I mean, just cheap Denver receivers are, I think, kind of the most interesting pieces. But from a stacking standpoint, yeah, not really. Los Angeles, Carolina, I don't really love as like a game to stack, but I do think there's some pretty interesting pieces. I mean, with no McCaffrey, like DJ Moore has quietly, been getting just a ton of volume his way, and Robbie Anderson's been kind of the one converting on, his sub more volume. So like, I do think going with like a DJ Moore as kind of a single piece. Carolina is a team that's super gettable on the ground, so going with Eckler or Kelly, doing some sort of like maybe like Eckler Moore stack, like could be viable, but as kind of a game that I want like to full stack, I don't really see this game being of much interest.
Right, I see having zero of this game completely.
Gotcha.
Like to me, Eckler and Kelly. Eckler's what, 6,800? With the amount, look at the running backs we have on this slate. Drake is 6,000. Sanders is 6,400. Connor is cheaper. Singletary's in play. Mike Davis on the other side at 50 with cheap. I mean, like, why am I paying $6,800 for a guy that's splitting carries? Well, it's against the worst rushing defense. Who cares at this point? He's 6,800. I need him to get 80% target. I need him 80% of the rushes and 15+% of the target share, which I guess could happen. But it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, the Panthers have a bad run defense, but they're going to run two running backs at them. So
no, that's fair. That makes sense.
Right. So like to me, and then when you stack, and it's like, what am I stacking? If anything, I'm more likely to take a shot on like a Allen or a Williams in the game, and just as a one-off, or stack it that way. Do a DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, some type of 1-1 like that. I could see that. But as far as cheap running backs, what is your take on how the backfield of the 49ers is going to play out? Because Jerick McKinnon, I mean, with Mostert and Coleman out, like McKinnon is projected well, but Wilson's there also. So it's, I mean, in that cheap running back range, do you prefer McKinnon Davis, or Singletary. Like that's kind of like the three cheap guys that are being thrust into new role. I mean, Singletary is not a new role, just that Moss isn't there anymore, so you don't have to worry about him. I think the McKinnon situation is the highest variance. If McKinnon gets 80% of snaps, he crushes in the spot at that price. The problem is that he may just stay in the same role that he had, and like he's not really worth he's 4,900. Okay, great against the Giants. Then
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned all those guys. I mean, we have them projected median wise. I mean, super close together. And I don't know. To me, we saw. Well, I don't know. I'm not that familiar with Mike Davis. I know he got was pretty effective pass catcher in relief duty last week. But with Seattle historically, like he wasn't really super involved in the pass game, correct?
No, he got passes out of the backfield when he. But I mean, did you? I just look at these three players and go cash games, not necessarily like I think if there's anyone that's going to have a ceiling, it'll be McKinnon, but the ownership is going to come with it. I think I'm more likely to play a receiver in that range in GPPs than because you don't have, like, if you're not paying up for Hopkins, you could kind of do whatever you're not paying for Hopkins or Zeke, you can kind of do whatever you want. So like, why would I want to do whatever I want at a cheap chalk running back position when I could, like, if we take a look at the running back ownership on this slate. So I think it's going to be a big deal. I think it's like we have Sanders, Taylor, Drake, Zeke, Henry, and then we get down to 10% McKinnon. Like, why can't I play James Conner at 6,700 at 5%? I mean, like, why can't I just mix in? I could there's Carson. Like, if I don't need to go down and get 5K running back because I'm not playing Hopkins or Julio or any of the 7K wide receivers, like, why do I even need to be in this range in the first place? I'm going to play Miles Sanders and then Carson, and then I get leverage there, and I can play any of the receivers I want. Like, this is the kind of, it's a play whoever you want type of slate where, like, the vomit stacks are just not appealing because you don't, if you're paying up anywhere, you're paying up for chalk. So, like, that's a lot of times you could find on slates where you're paying up for some, like, oh, everyone's going to play Hopkins. No one's going to play Michael Thomas. No one's going to play Devontae Adams. No one's like, there's multiple of those guys. And you're like, well, one's going to be 24% owned, one's going to be 8% owned. But at least I'm paying up, and then I'm playing a vomit stack with them. I just don't see how, like, is there a need, unless you're playing the high-priced wide receivers, which are going to be chalk, to play any three of those guys? Just like, don't play them.
Yeah.
I don't think they have a ceiling. Like, it's a ceiling problem. I could see Connor having 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't see Mike Davis killing me. He has 13 points. Great. Thanks. Like, that's not going to kill me. Right. Singletary, maybe he doesn't even get in the end zone. He has 5 catches out of the backfield and 12 rushes. And he's sitting there with 15 points. That doesn't kill me either. I just don't see how these guys kill me. So why should I even bother playing them?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about him at the top of the show. Drake from a median perspective doesn't project quite as well, but he, I think, has some ceiling to him, and nicely negatively correlated with.
Yeah, but he's also going to be 26% owned. So it's like, it's fine. I get it, but he's not the piece of the lineup that I'm differentiating with. Like, he's just like the negative correlation on the Cardinals stack, but I still got to find leverage somewhere else.
Okay. Right.
That's why I went to the Miles Sanders. Like, how do I leverage over that? Because to leverage off of Drake, you're just leveraging. Oh, instead of playing Drake, I'm playing Chalk Hopkins. It's like, well, what did that do? That didn't change anything.
Yeah.
So is there anything else on the slate that sticks out from the advanced sports analytics model?
Yeah, not really. I mean, we're kind of in the process of responding to Friday injury. So we're going to update that on the site. I'll probably take a deeper dive into some correlation, probably Saturday and Sunday morning to understand. I think at this point I've, looked enough at it week over week to kind of get a sense of where some of the good, correlated spots are, but I still think, giving it a second pass and kind of looking at that, would be useful. That's available on our site for subscribers. We'll continue to update our, implied total projections and probabilities of, slate topping scores from a real football perspective. Continue to update that through the course of the weekend as, lines and stuff move. I think it's
that's at advancedsportsanalytics.com.
Yep.
Right. And you're on Twitter occasionally, right?
Yeah. ASA is on Twitter. We've been trying to do some kind of YouTube videos to walk through the tools, just provide some tutorials for how to use them. They are contextualized within kind of, specific slates, but the idea is that, the functions and the features of the tools, can be used in the same way for, the present and future slates. So that could be a useful spot to check us out. If you go to our Twitter, I think we should have some links to some of our YouTube videos. So could be a good spot to look.
Right. And if you want more tools and content, get an RG RotoGrinders Premium Core 4 subscription. We're running a promotion, $5 off your first month. So sign up, rotogrinders.com/media/ASA. The link is in the description of the video or the audio below. So for Stuart Gibson, I'm Jordan Cooper. This has been the Advanced Sports Analytics Show on rotogrinders.com.